Okay, oh my goodness, now what? Well, here, look. Get wisdom. Get understanding, forget it not. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all your getting, get understanding. Okay, that is the way I approach everything, including this book itself. See, I don't just take anybody's word for what this book says. Okay, and I just don't take anybody's word for what this says or what people have said about it. You know, I want to understand it. Same thing with this book. I want to understand it. Now, the point isn't whether or not this book is, whether there's a God or not. It's really not the point. I mean, ultimately, I think so, but it's not the point. This book exists, and it says what it says. Whether I agree with it or not, it still says what it says. So I've been studying this book for a long time. I just want to know what it says. Doesn't matter whether I agree with it or not. I just want to know what it says. And so get wisdom, and with all you're getting, get understanding. So that is the way I approach this. You know, I learn about it. I want to understand it. And so, and that's the way I approach everything, because frankly, folks, I have been deceived before. I've had people deceive me as to what that book actually says and what it doesn't say. I've had people deceive me over what's wrong with my car and what isn't wrong with it, over what's wrong with my physical body and what isn't wrong with it, and over my horse's feet and what isn't wrong with them and everything else. Okay, so we want to understand, we want to have knowledge, but we want to understand how this thing grows, why it does what it does, and I believe that that can be done by understanding the growth and the structural, physical laws that apply to all things that anyone would build. You know, this is basically the way I look at the overall hoof. You know, how does it grow? What are the materials made of? How does one part affect another? Things like that. Okay, so that statement is true. You should get knowledge, you should get wisdom, but you don't just want one-liners. See, most of us are just full of one-liners, which are conclusions that other people have drawn and statements they have made, and then we pick them up like tape recorders. We have absolutely no understanding of how they came to their conclusion. We just have their conclusion in a little sum that's in our head in a statement. And so our head is full of statements, but we don't have any understanding a lot of times about how they drew their conclusion, or even if truly their conclusion is right. We've had an understanding put in our head that we did not come to, that we did not research, that we did not study. Okay, so when I research anything, whether it's the Bible, or whether it's history, or whether it's something to do with my car, something to do with my physical body and my health, or something to do with this hoof, I want to understand what's going on. I want to understand. All right? And then my understanding and my wisdom and my knowledge is based on understanding the fullness of the object. So that's the way I approach this thing. I want to understand it. And I can't say I understand it fully, that's for sure. And I haven't got all the answers. Okay? But I know the more I look into this, the sooner I'm going to find answers. I'm going to understand what happens to this thing. Now, this is my theory. Okay? Now the trim I'm trying to develop, the understanding that I want is, why do wild horses have such good feet? Okay, that led me to understand the structure and makeup of the hoof wall, how it's connected to the inner foot. In other words, the anatomy of the whole thing. And the conclusion I came to was that wild horses have such dynamic feet because from the moment they're born, they're up and moving, and they wear the wall down here so that the wall never really gets long and gets a leverage or a torque on it that pulls it out of shape away from the coffin bone or the softer parts of the internal foot, which would be all this, well, my softer parts are falling off. That was my periopal skin. Meaning the coronary band, the lateral cartilage here that goes into the heel, and the bulb, and which is composed right in here of the digital cushion, which this is all soft, remember, and movable. Remember, your heel, the sole in your heel, goes clear back to here. Your coffin bone ends right here. So I've wanted to study and understand how this should fit on that. And so in a wild horse, because the wall never gets longer than just like this, then this wall never grows out, never creates leverage that is pulling the wall into different shapes away from the internal foot here, and things like that. So this is what I have wanted to understand. And so the wild horse, basically, the shoe fits the foot. You know, his external capsule just fits that internal foot right here rather perfectly. Not perfect, because, I mean, a lot of it's subject to, a few different things. But as far as the desert Mustang and the movement he gets, he naturally rests down his own feet from birth, and so everything stays basically where it should stay during his whole life. And because of that, he develops a perfect sole fit on the bottom of this foot, because which makes his feet very hardy. Okay? Because when this wall gets pulled away from the internal foot here, or distorted, it stretches out the sole right here into different positions where that sole is not maintained under the internal foot right here. So, and that's why you see they say your horses can't go barefoot or your horse is tender, because the sole has been displaced by the wall, because the wall is meant to contain the sole. All right, so what I want to share with you today has to do with foundered horses, and horses that get laminitis, and horses that get what is called a laminar wedge. Now I'm going to show you, you know that I've done some videos on, I forget that horse's name, Cat Dancer? Yeah, alright, Cat Dancer, which was a horse. A lady called me, said she had this horse with bad laminitis. She wound up putting the horse down. Those were the first feet I ever got, and actually I didn't even dissect them for like 3 years. And but I'm going to share with you today some mistakes I made when I first looked at these feet, because of how I had been influenced by someone else's teaching about the bars. Okay? And I'm going to share with you what I see going on with this foot now that I have more understanding in how this hoof ball grows and in the internal foot as to how this wall should grow down and be perfectly connected to this foot, and what happens when it isn't. So, you know, this wall that we're looking at right here, okay, this wall right here, now here's your lamina right here, and it interconnects with the lamina that's on the hoof capsule here. And always remember, we are dealing with two separate yet connected objects, and this can be taken off just like a shoe. Alright, so this lamina, like leaves, they connect like this. you see. So the wall grows down from here. Look right here where it's connected. Now the thickness of your wall, where is it? Okay, let's look at this here. The thickness of your wall, there are horn tubules that are thickest on the outside. They get thinner as you go to the inside. And then you have your lamina leaves right on the very inside here that connect to these lamina leaves here. Now, this piece of lamina that grows from here and connects into the sole right here, okay, it's got a place that it grows down and it connects to this piece of sole right here, right before it gets to the edge. Now, this is where it connects for the rest of its life. This doesn't move. However, this does, which causes damage to the internal foot. So when this lamina grows down and connects to certain spots all along here where the sole corium is, that is where that piece of sole is supposed to grow. Now, when the wall gets long and distorted and moves, it will stretch all this either outward like this, which will thin out the sole ridge. See, if you have a piece of lamina growing down here and connecting right here to this piece of sole, if this wall here gets long and then gets pulled out like this, okay, that is going to pull that sole with it. Now, sometimes you get a stretched white line to where the sole doesn't totally pull with it. The sole will stay back here, but you'll have a very stretched white line, lamina line. Okay, but most of the time, this wall stretches out like this slowly and gets pulled out, and the sole just goes with it. So that when you turn it over, you should be seeing a tight white line right about here. That's where it should be. But in the foot that is distorted, you'll see a tight white line clear out here. And what you're not seeing is how the sole has been pulled way forward up here. Okay, so lately I have been trimming my pony who ate something wrong and foundered, and so her feet are all distorted. And so I came to the conclusion the other day that she had a big laminar wedge. Now I'm going to show you Cat Dancer's feet here in a minute, because there's two different kinds of laminar wedges. Okay, one is, let's see, let's get this. One is, here's your inner foot, okay? That's your inner foot. I wonder if you could see that. Well, I'm not quite in the right spot. Okay, here's your inner foot. Right here. Alright, and the wall, here's your coronary band. The wall goes down like this. And when everything's right, everything stays together like this. See that? Okay, something like that. Okay, but when the wall gets long, as we know, okay, let's see. When this wall gets long and starts to come out this way, the sole stretches with it. Now here would be, let's say this is the inner foot right here. Okay? This wall here is growing out this way. Do you see that? We'll take that. Okay, this develops inside here between the inner foot, that is between here and the wall that has come out here, what is called the laminar wedge. Now the reason it's called a wedge is because look at this. It is wedge shaped. Do you see that? That is in the shape of a wedge. It's wedged up in there. Now, what is a laminar wedge? Okay, a laminar wedge, well, first I'm going to show you the two different types. There's two different types. Now, this will also, a lot of times, because you have a very strong tendon back here that's hooked in here, okay, if there's no connection in the wall right here, this will cause this coffin bone to be pulled down like this a lot of times. And you'll see a dip in here. Okay, but that's not the only kind of laminar wedge. There is another kind. The other kind, let's see, the other kind, let's do the other kind in a different color. Hope you can see this. All right, the other kind is where the foot stays looking relatively normal. Let's see. Relatively normal in the toe right here. And but what is happening is that it loses its laminar connection in here, but instead of the wall getting pulled out like this one did here, okay, what happens is just the foot itself gets pulled back like this. You see that? Okay, now as a result, because the back of the foot, the back of the internal foot is being pulled up. See, the wall is not coming out like this. Rather, instead, this part is being pulled back. The internal foot is being pulled back like this and up. Now, because the wall in here is connected to the back of this internal foot, what you'll see is you'll start to see this hairline here rising to where it's more like that. You see that? In other words, the horn tubules that are here, that were going like this, are now clear up into here. And so it seems like your heels are growing. Your heels are not growing. What is going on is the back of the foot, the back of the internal foot, right here, is being pulled up this way. The toe is being pulled back that way, but the wall is relatively remaining the same. Now, this is what happened to Cat Dancer. But still, what we have in between the wall right here and the internal foot, the toe of the internal foot, we have a wedge. And you can have a kind of a combination of these two going on as well. A lot of times, when you have this kind, the heels will grow forward like this. When you have this kind, the wall up here at the hairline starts growing upwards like this. And I'll show you what happens to that. Now, again, what do we have in both of these? We have a wedge. A wedge in between the wall here and the internal foot here. You see that? And in either case, because you have this wedge, this dorsal wall will not grow back down connected to this internal foot here. Okay, so you got two different things going on. So somehow you need to get the leverage off of this wall so that from the coronary band where it grows down up here, it can grow back down on the internal foot. Okay. So that is the dilemma that you find. Now I'm going to show you an example. Now on my pony, I have this kind of foot. Okay. Combined with what is going on here, where the back of the hairline here, the wall, okay, is coming up with the internal foot here. You see that? Okay, so she's got, instead of having a nice slant like that, about a 20-degree angle, she's almost straight across. And she has a toe that comes way out like that. But on Cat Dancer, she did not have that. She had a relatively normal looking foot. Now, I'll try and get this off of here. I'll show you here. Okay, just a second. Let me find. Okay, these are two different hoof capsules, half capsules off two different horses. This is off Toby, who did not have laminitis. And this is off a Cat Dancer, who did have laminitis. Now, if we were to map these feet, they would, by mapping the sole, okay, we would come to the same conclusion that the breakover should be right here. Let me see if I got a ruler. Okay, let's go from the frog forward. Okay, that is from the tip of the frog on Cat Dancer's foot right here. From the apex of the frog to the end of the wall here is a good 1.5 inches to the white line. Okay, on him, it's 1.25 inches. So see, on the sole, the feet relatively look the same. Now, the one difference you're going to see is that there is no concavity right here. It looks the same around here, but this dips in a little bit at the frog, and this is protruding. I'm going to show you the reason for that. But in a lot of ways, they relatively look the same. Look, the sole is the same size, right? It's not like she had a toe that went way out here. Okay, now I'm going to show you the difference on the inside when you look. Look at that. Now, this wall here fit was tightly connected to the internal foot right here. You see that? Okay. This one wasn't. See, and this is why, unless you take x-rays, and not everybody can afford x-rays, if you have a foot like this that didn't have a toe that went out like that, like if you were to hold a rasp up against it like they tell you to tell you if there's a flare, look at that. Okay? Same with this one. Look at that. Alright, so if you were to hold up a rasp, it would show no flaring like usually happens on the other kind of laminar wedge where the toe gets stretched out forward. In this foot, the dorsal wall did not get stretched forward like this. Rather, what happened was the internal foot got pulled up. Okay, see, it should have been like that. You see that? But what happened was she got laminitis. The laminar connection between the hoof capsule and the internal foot released in the toe, and the deep digital flexor tendon, which runs up the back of the leg here, just started pulling the back of that foot up like that. Do you see that? See, it was like this. When that laminar connection released, that deep digital flexor tendon just began pulling the foot up like that. As a result, it started pushing her whole foot right out the back of the hoof capsule. And you can see here, this periopal skin is very stretched. Now, the reason we don't see a lot of this going on is because the periopal skin that goes around here and covers the bulbs stretches a great amount. Now, now here again, look at this. You can see the wedge. You see why it's called a wedge. Why is it called a laminar wedge? Because these lamina that are shaped like this and should be very close together like this, they stay connected, but the cells proliferate and grow and add to, and pretty soon you just got it going like this. See, and widening and widening. They're still connected, okay? But they're like expanding. You see that? Now, if you look in there, I can take a pin and stick all the way through there. Just a minute. Let me get a pin. Okay, I'm going to take a pin because remember they're like this, right? Okay, so I can stick a pin in here. Let's see. Let's stick it up here first. We'll take it out right here. Goes all the way to there. Do you see that? Okay, let's stick it in down here. Do you see that? And so this is relatively hard. This is like leaves, like sheets of paper. Okay, and what's happening is all these laminar are stretching, and that is why it's called a laminar wedge, because of the shape of it. See there? Well, here. There we go. See, I can stick that all the way in there. Just like so. And that is why a lot of times you can get this anywhere on the hoof, this stretched lamina that's still connected. Okay, and that is why, let's say if this was in the sides right here where you put nails, because you would put nails right here, 1, 2, 3. That is why when they put nails up in here on a lot of horses that have this wedge, this stretched lamina, okay, the hoof would just break out, the shoe won't stay on, because there's nothing solid there to really nail it to. This is all pretty much hollow right in here. Okay, now, a horse will put up with so much of this. Now I want you to notice something here. First of all, look at where the coronary band is. I look at this foot and I go, how in the world would you straighten this out on this horse? Okay, you can see this right here. Okay, this is supposed to go down like this. This wall right here should be here. But look how it has so distorted right here where it's hooked to the coronary band. There's no way by mapping a foot from the bottom, you know, you think you got everything right, okay, and you got the breakover back, but do you? No. Look at, you're still clear way out in front of that laminar wedge, you know. So now what happens is, and what happened to this mare was, slowly her foot was just being pushed out the back here. Because this wall, this just became a real enemy to her whole foot, this area here. Because then all this started growing longer, which is connected to this part of the foot right here. And it just started shoving her foot out the back, the internal foot out the back. And this got longer in here. Now look here. It's going to take me a minute to explain this so you see it. Look. There is a certain length of hoof wall that goes from here to here, and from here to here, and from here to here. If it gets anything above that, you have distortion. Okay? Now, what you're going to see on here, if we took, well, I wonder if I have a decent ruler. Okay, well, let's just take this. This is centimeters. Okay, let's say we go from here to here. Okay, that's about 5.5 centimeters right here. This area here. We follow this horn tubule down right there. 5.5 centimeters. Okay, if we follow it here, what do we have? We have 5. If we follow it down to here, we have about 4. All right, so when they get that laminar wedge in there, because, let's see if I can explain this. Okay, that toe is jammed up against that laminar wedge there, and it's rising like this. Meanwhile, these horn tubules here are growing down and growing longer. It seems like your heels are growing, but in truth, your internal foot is rising. Because, see, the heel wall still grows down from here, okay? But when you look at the bottom, it's not going to look like you even have any heel sometimes, or long heels at all, because you'll take it down to there. But what's happening is this wall, as it's growing, because this toe can't go anywhere, this wall, as it's growing, is pushing the foot out of the hoof capsule. See, let me see if I can show you. As the laminar wedge develops, okay, it's just taking that foot right out of the hoof capsule like this. But this wall stays connected to here, so these horn tubules from here to here get longer. Okay, we'll show you here. Okay, now the horn tubule, now of course this foot is shrunk up. Okay, and you notice here too, see how thin and stretched the coronary band groove is here at the top, while it's very thick right here. So you want it to be uniform. So we have horn tubules in the toe where the laminar wedge is that are about 5.5 inches long. Now let's go over here. Here's a horn tubule. Let me draw a line on it where the horn tubule is, right here in the center, the amount of hoof wall. I don't know what that was. No. Now, the length of hoof wall right here is 6.5 inches. Do you see that? What is happening is these horn tubules that are still relatively connected, see, this was the only place she was relatively connected, had a good connection in the lamina to her internal foot, was right from here to here. The laminar wedge went from here to here around this portion of the foot. And so, as the foot got pushed up, these horn tubules, because they're connected to that foot in the back that's being pushed out like this, these horn tubules just continued to grow, but they weren't growing out the bottom here. They were adding to in the top here, because what was happening was the internal foot was being forced out the back of the capsule by this whole process. Again, okay, look at this. How long are our horn tubules in our toe? Right on, okay, on this horse, let's say 7. By the time we get back to here, what are they? They should have been, if we could see the coronary band, they should have been about 4.5 or 5 right there. And then less as we go back here. All right, but what are they on this horse? They were at the most 6, let's say 6, right here in the toe. But by the time we got over to here, what are they? They're about 8. Do you see that? You see, because all the parts of this wall can grow independently of one another. All right? If you go out and you trim your horse and you leave part of it long, that part will grow to the ground first. So they're all growing at the same time, but they can all grow independently as well. Different lengths, you know. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some of the manifestations that happen to this foot. First of all, this hoof wall here finally so pushed her foot out of the capsule that she was growing, she became totally disconnected from the sole right here. I don't know if you can see that. She became totally disconnected. Her foot, the internal foot, right here, the sole corium from which the sole grows, right here, got so far shoved back from the original capsule that she was growing another sole in between this sole and the sole of her foot. And I want you to see that. Okay, do you see the sole here she was growing? Let's see. right here. This is sole right there. In between, look at that. Here's the sole of the original capsule right here. See, I can shove that right in there like that. See there? That's how much space she had between the original sole and the new sole she was growing on the bottom of her foot. It had so shoved the foot back that she was disconnected from this sole of the hoof capsule and was growing new sole on the bottom of her foot within this. Now, how would you ever even realize that? Okay? How would you even ever know that? See? How would you know that? Now, not only was she growing new sole, okay, by this time, she was growing new bars, new frog. See, because she had become totally disconnected internally from the original hoof capsule. See, and so she was growing new everything. See, right here, she's got, I'm not sure, but I think she's got even different hoof wall growing right here on the side. So she was trapped in this distorted capsule right here with this laminar wedge, and this wall here was just pushing her foot out of the capsule. Here we go. Here's the other piece. Now here, can you see her sole? Her sole is right here. Do you see the space between them? This was the sole growing from the foot, and this was the old sole that she became disconnected from. Right there. Now, I'm pretty sure she was also growing, see, this is all new sole. This is different sole right here that she was growing that was disconnected from this. Also, new frog right there. Now you look at the periopal skin here, how stretched it is. Now look, she don't have a high heel, does she? No, because the whole foot was being forced out the back of the capsule, and this periopal skin will stretch like you would not believe. Okay, now when I first saw this foot, I didn't see any of this. Did not realize any of this was going on. Okay, but when 3 years later, when I finally dissected it, I don't know why I just never got around to it, taking them apart. 3 years later, when I finally dissected it, this is what I saw right here. Let me see. Hold on, let me find the other parts, because here's her other, this is really the first one I looked at, and I took some pictures. Now look here again at the wall. Look at the length of the horn tubules from here to here on this other foot. Just a minute, let me find it. Where I had a box with a bunch of stuff in it. Now I can't seem to find it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. This is what I saw. Look at this bar. When I took that hoof capsule off, that is what I saw. Look at that. Okay, now I had already been influenced by bar teaching from, let's see, who was it? Oregon School of Natural Hoof Care and Cheryl Henderson, and from the Strasser trimmers. Okay, things that I'd heard about the bars, how the bars could just grow and become impacted and all this. Okay, I can see how somebody could come up with that interpretation looking at this foot. When you first take this hoof capsule off and you see this bar sticking up in a foot like that, okay, that's what you're thinking, but that is not what's going on. Okay? What is going on with this horse was she's growing a whole new set of bars under the old bars right here. Okay? This laminitis, her foot had been so shoved out of the capsule that she was growing more frog, she was growing a separate bar, but the old hoof capsule was still on there, covering up. You know, the internal foot had been separated from a lot of it. Well, the stuff keeps growing, so technically she was growing a hoof within a hoof right there. So you see something like that and you go, oh my goodness, look what the bars can do. They can just shove that internal foot right up. That is not what happened. Okay, she did not have impacted bars. What she had was that this laminar wedge in the toe that goes clear over to here, well, her foot was being pulled up like this by the deep digital flexor tendon because she had no connection in the toe wall to keep her foot up like this. And so it was being pulled back like that, and this laminar wedge was developing. And then as the foot got pulled up like this, the wall in the side, the wall in the foot, again, is being pulled up like this. Well, this wall here is connected right into here. Okay, so it just keeps growing, but instead of growing out and down out the capsule like it should, I mean, some of it's coming out, but not all of it, like it should, it's still connected right there, and so it's just getting higher in between here and here. You see that shouldn't be that high right there. Look at all that hoof capsule wall right from there to there. Here, let's look at this. Let's look at another foot. Well, you see the shape it should be. It should be lessening right here. Instead, it was going like this. As the foot here was pulled up in back, it was just, let's see if I can mimic it. If we have it like this, you see that? Okay, now, again, the whole foot was being forced out the back of the capsule this way. The toe that should have been here had come back to here, and the back of the foot here was being forced and shoved out as all this wall kept growing and just pushing that foot out till finally there was just a tremendous amount of disconnection from the sole, from the bar, everything, and she was literally growing new sole and new bar underneath what you're seeing right here. All right, so I hope I explained that well enough. And, you know, I apologize for coming up with the wrong interpretation about impacted bars. I don't know. I imagine bars could, to a degree, get impacted. Good, heavy, strong, major bars. But they're also going to need some help with these other things going on. Because in the long run, your bar is pretty weak. All right? It's going to take the path of least resistance.'t why it likes to lay over and grow out the side of the foot. I mean, your bar it's just this little piece of hook wall right here. You see? Okay, that's why it's going to grow up, and usually it's just going to lay over on your sole right here. I don't really think that in most cases it has enough strength to shove way up into the back of your foot. I think what is going on is a lot of times there's some laminar wedge or something's going on right in here to where the wall from here to here is getting longer than it should and is actually shoving the whole back of the foot out like so. I mean, each case is different. It can be a combination of things, but in the long run, I do not believe that the bars, well, they can cause a problem. I mean, they can lay all over your sole here. You want to keep this open. I'm not saying not to trim the bars, but I'm saying quit worrying about impacted bars. Just start trimming them down to the level of the sole. And whatever you do, you don't want to trim off this area right here, you will find a lump right in here. Here's the bar. There's the end of the bar, and you usually find a lump right here. Do not trim that off. Why is that? Because that lump is in the coffin bone itself, right here. This is where your bar ends, right here. And right at the end of the bar, you're going to find a lump. And so there's been this big debate, should you trim the lump, should you not trim the lump? I decided quite a year ago, year and a half, 2 years ago, no, better not trim that lump, because it holds and stabilizes that bar right there, and because it's also part of the actual coffin bone itself. All right. Now, I was saying before, okay, that we want to know, we have to understand the shape of this foot here. Let's see, I think I have another foot somewhere. Oh, this is it. Okay, now I said, and I hope that you realized when I said this, that I was also referring to where if you have a sole connected to the foot, okay, because your wall grows down from here, connects with the sole here, and they grow to the ground together right here, and the wall maintains the sole under the foot. See what happens when you don't have a wall, right? Okay, so the wall maintains the sole underneath there. So it's a certain shape, it's a certain distance from here down to the end of the sole. The sole only grows so long, then it's supposed to exfoliate, and you're supposed to have, as far as I know, a uniform level of sole thickness around here. See how that's the same all the way around? Okay, so the wall grows down here, down to the ground, and if it stays trimmed and round, everything's great, and the hoof capsule stays formed to the foot. It's when different leverages, you could have your toe staying short, but if your heel is getting long, it's going to put leverage as that horse walks, pushing right here, which is going to push that wall forward like this. Okay, now there's so many different things that can happen to this wall, depending on if the wall gets long in certain places, or if you get disconnection from here to here in the lamina. Now, what I was telling you before about how when the lamina become inflamed and disconnected, and the deep digital flexor tendon running up the back of the foot here, okay, when that pulls this up like that, that is called coffin bone rotation. Okay, and the reason it's called rotation, and the reason why it rotates, is because, let me find this other little bone here. Come on, little bone, where'd you go? Okay, right here. Now, this is your coffin bone, distal phalanx. They also call it P1. Okay, this is your short pastern bone, which they call P2. And it sits in here like so. Oh, wait a minute. I got that right? Yeah, okay. Sits in here like so. Okay, now you know that this joint moves, right? It's connected and it moves. That's why it's called rotation. That's why it moves the way it does. Okay, because when it comes disconnected from the wall here, okay, and there's nothing holding it, these lamina, and the wall isn't holding it in a solid position, well then, it rotates. Here, let's do it on here. Is that working? I'm trying to look here. Okay, normally, I suppose I got this on. Trying to make sure I got this on right. Okay, so this doesn't really move a lot, especially forward like that, but it can move quite a ways back this way. See that? Be forced back this way. So what happens is, when the lamina let loose here, it rotates on P2 here. See how that is? See, rotate. That's why they call it coffin bone rotation. So there's a very strong tendon running back, connected in here, and running up the back. Now, I think I'm missing my navicular bone here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I am. But I knew there was something wrong. Am I? Yeah, I am. Okay. Now, but this is just to give you an example. Okay, there should be another little bone here in between these two, the navicular bone. It's not still stuck to the foot, is it? Make sure. Yeah, okay, you really want to listen to me. Anyway, okay, so it rotates. It rotates here. And it'll rotate back like this, right within the hoof capsule. There's the hoof capsule. Now remember, this horse here was separated from her sole. Okay, so this coffin bone that was like that, let's get this right, it just rotated back like this in there. You see that? Okay. Now, again, what does that do? This part goes upwards like this. So the wall, on the pictures I drew here before, okay, you had, let's see, okay, you had a wall that had been flared out like so. Okay, and you had a coffin bone that probably slightly rotated down like this. That's not very good. Okay, what happens is not only can wall flare out in front here, okay, as this area of the foot here, let's see if I can draw it. That's the internal foot. Okay, the wall right here will also go up like this with it. You see that? Yeah. Okay. So that is what happened to this foot here. This wall from here to here. That's why you see that the line between here and here is wider than from here to here. It wasn't just because the toe was being crunched together like that. It was because this wall here, instead of growing down and out, because of where the foot was, it starts coming up like this. And you'll see that it'll be wider between here and here. See, right here and here, than it will here and here. So you can add to the foot this way, but when the coffin bone rotates and the foot is coming up in the rear, it will add hoof wall into this area right here as the foot is pushed up. Why is that? Because it grows from the coronary band, right? And the coronary band and the internal foot is being shoved up, back, and out of the foot. Okay. So, you know, how do you fix something like this? Boy, by the time it gets like Poor Cat Dancer here, you got a real mess. Especially because this whole piece of hoof wall here, it's, I mean, her lamina, okay, were pulled back here. Let's look here. Here's where her lamina were hooked to the internal foot. Okay, this is where it started. Okay, and if you look like this, it actually goes up like that. That's not at all how that should have been. You know, what could you have done for this poor horse? Well, you know, what I want to share with you here is during the time that I have been trimming here in Kansas, I have run into two different horses that when I went to trim them, they had a hoof capsule like this, similar to this, some with a little flared toe. But instead of having the sole, now you see how she had a nice tight white line here? Okay? Instead of having sole, that had stretched and remained right here. This area had come out of the whole hoof, and you'd look up in there, you could see up in there. Okay, all this wedge was gone around the whole hoof. Now, if you look at this wedge, okay, it goes clear to right here. All right, and it is, let's see, if I look in the light and I was to draw it, let's see, okay, basically goes about like that. This is where the wedge is, right here. Clear back to, well, right here, right there. That wedge. Now it tapers and gets smaller. See? That is the wedge. Here's where her coffin bone was. The toe of the internal foot was right there. All right? So, what a mess. What a mess, man. That'd really dishearten you to have to work with that. But I don't see it as impossible. But it would depend on if you had the right facilities to keep the mirror. I mean, this mirror had pressure sores all over from laying down, and boy, we can sure see now why, can't we? Okay, so this wedge, which went in the foot all the way around, like that, kept the foot, kept this whole toe from growing down correctly, clear back into here. See, when we think of a wedge, because of x-rays and everything, okay, you're only thinking of the very front of the toe, right here. But, let's put this together here. Oh, that's a different foot. Wait a minute. Okay. But, this wedge, let's see, let me mark it on this foot. Goes right here. Ends right here. Right about here. Okay, and it goes, just a second here. Right there. See it? That's where her true foot was. Okay, now I think that, you know, I'm not saying go running out and going, that's going on with my horse, because you don't know that. Okay, the best way to know is if you get x-rays. But if you can't get x-rays, there's other things that we can look at. We can look at what's going on with the lateral cartilage back here. Is it all shoved up and wanting to pooch out the back of the foot? That's one way you can tell. You can look at the periopal right here being stretched to the max. You can look at the side of the foot here. You know, how long are the horn tubules from here to here compared with the toe? You know, a horse, okay, let's see, there was one that I cut, because I remember I cut this because, okay, this was just like this one here. This is the other side of it, right here. Okay, now I've cut into the wedge there. Do you see that? Yeah. Let me find my mouse. See, I've cut into the wedge there. What a mess, huh? Here's her extra bar, She had another bar, as I said, growing right here. This was a whole other bar. Right here. But again, this was on a horse that had laminitis, that had coffin bone rotation, that caused the wall here in the side as the foot was drawn up to grow up high like this. Because, right, we should usually have a hairline that goes down like this. Isn't that right? Okay, well, you can't just cut the foot out here because the sole is still thin right in between here and here. So you can't just cut all that off necessarily, because you're going to cut right into the sole of the heel. Okay, so, or you're going to cut too close in here. So we look at this thing and we go, what could we have done? You know, and there are many horses that are in a partial stage of this. Okay? So, we look at that laminar wedge and we see that we'd have had to take all of this out right here. Now, as I said, I have run into two horses who were doing just fine where all of this was not in the foot. The wall, everything was still there, but you could look up in there and you could see what looked like that up in there. Let's see here. Yeah, this whole wedge here was out. It wasn't there, and there was just a big, huge gap right here, and I was like, what the heck? You know, so, you know, my thinking is that, and I'm going to do this on the pony, I'm going to come in here, because I know she has laminar wedge. I'm going to take a video of this, and I know that the sole is hardened up. See, that's another thing, too. The lamina will produce this serum that will harden up the sole and everything right in here, and it just solidifies this whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to see if I can find this laminar wedge on the other side of the wall right here. And I've done this before. When I've scribed out a foot in the toe, I've run into laminar wedge that was behind a nice, what looked like a nice sole and a nice white line. Okay, so this is definitely a dilemma for some people, but this is what I'm going to tell you is that till you deal with this laminar wedge, that foot isn't going to get better, and that's why some of these ponies, the toe is just constantly messed up. You know, and never gets quite right. And you might get it back to here and have your wall growing down pretty good. But if you never, well, look at this. Look at the shape of it. Look at the shape of it. See, this is the shape of the internal foot right here. Okay? If all you ever do is do a rocker, like, I really don't want to mark my foot up too much. Do you know how we do a rocker? How we will measure forth and let's pretend that frog ain't there right now. Let's just pretend this is a long toe on a horse. We know that the coffin bone ends right here, so we're going to go, about 1/4 of an inch over, up to right about here, and then we draw a line. We draw a line across the foot, right? From here to here. Okay, and then we do a rocker. Okay, well, what's going on right here? Okay, this is the pillar area from here to here. Right? Because the pillar area of the internal foot here. Okay, so if we do a rocker, and we're just taking off the toe, we take it over here to the side, and then we just barely kind of round this up a bit. Okay, you might get a good connection in your toe here, but what's happening is you're always going to have a long pillar right here. You see? That's why when you do a rocker, you want to come around like this, and you want to do this whole area of the toe. See, pretend this is like a long foot, like the foot is clear out here. You know, and this is a toe you're working on. See, we can't do those rockers where we square it off like this, because that is keeping a part of our foot in distortion right here. Okay, and you might have to cast your horse. Yeah, you might have to put casts on him. You might even have to put some composite shoes or boots on him until the wall can come back so that it can bring the sole back under the internal foot, which is clear back here. Now, if you look at this, you can see how thin the sole was under the foot. Well, and look here, where the other sole was growing. You know, but it came back to about here, and that's when it finally separated from the original sole, and it started growing new sole within the capsule. All right, and there again, there's our other sole. This is all sole that is just simply attached to another sole right here. All this sole would have been basically dead. And yeah, what a mess. Poor horse. Whew. How painful. I'm thankful for her feet though, because I sure learned a lot from them. Okay, well, I am really tired. But you see, you know, I build all kinds of different things, and I think of different things to try and understand how this thing grows, how it relates to the internal foot. I wish there was somebody that had done this for me and I could just read a book. Like here's a little number I did. Okay, now the reason I did this, and I had some more of these. These represent horn tubules here, and of course it had a sole on it right there. What I wanted to demonstrate with this was the different things that happen to the lateral cartilage and the coronary band and the bulbs when you have hoof distortion and the wall getting distorted and the horn tubules growing a certain way, either at a certain angle to where they begin pushing up on the coronary band here, and they can push the whole lateral cartilage up. Okay, now you have to imagine that we have periopal skin from here to here. Here, we'll make some. Okay, so this, I'll kind of demonstrate what happens. What happens, maybe this stuff will stretch. Okay? Maybe this Play-Doh will stretch. We'll pretend it's, we'll pretend that this is your periopal skin. Okay, and it's hooked into a heel there. We're just going to hook it into the sole for right now. Okay. Now, when everything's good, it's like that. Okay, but as this toe begins to rotate, or as things go cattywampus kind of in these horn tubules right here, okay, and they can't grow forward like they should and out the bottom of the hoof, okay, and if the toe starts coming back like I was showing you, well, then these things, they're growing still, but what they're doing is they're pushing up, I don't know if I can demonstrate, they're pushing up the back of the foot like this. See that? Here. See how they're pushing that bulb up? Okay, and then if they get bent forward like this, they can also pull that bulb right underneath. Do you see how they can move this whole area of the foot? Yeah, let's take the sole off for now. They can move this whole area of the foot right here. And if you get a big wedge in here, see, I'm trying to figure out how to, if you have a big wedge in here, and you have, let's say, these like bent forward a little bit, and they're growing, okay, let's see, this can move, but also, let me see if I can get this going. what can happen is, let me undo this. Okay, let's see, how would that work? Because I know that it squeezes the back of this foot right up out of here. Oh, okay, this is connected right to here. All this can become loose right here, but this is still growing right here. Okay, and so, let me see. Let's undo this for a second, because I'm trying to figure out a way to demonstrate this. Okay, normally it would be like that, but the connection's been lost here, and so then these horn tubules start pushing this foot up and out of the capsule, like this. See? Like so. But the periopal will cover the whole thing. You know, I don't have the best things. I wish I was a computer whiz and I could do a perfect animation of how this growth happens. Okay? But one thing I want you to know is that this here, if the hair, look at, the hairline is at a certain angle. Certain angle, right? It grows down, it connects with the sole here, and then it grows to the ground. And it should only be a certain angle like that, going all the way. Well, when the toe gets disconnected, it can start pushing that hoof out of the hoof capsule, like that. And so it's going to be separating from the bottom, the back of the hoof capsule here too. You know, this area right in here is going to be getting longer. And it's just going to push that hoof right out of the capsule. But it's all hidden because the wall keeps growing right here, and the periopal here will stretch quite far, and yet it's not perfectly fitted and connected within that hoof capsule. So, again, what I wanted to demonstrate was how when you get way underrun heels, it can take all this soft stuff back here and pull that bulb right down to the ground like that. Okay? Or when you get a disconnected toe, it can just lift that whole foot right up out of the capsule like so. See there? Okay, so that was what I wanted to share with you today. I wish I had something better to give you a demonstration with. You're going to have to use your imagination in some of this. You know, but you have to remember that all this is soft. Okay, this can be pulled under, and horn tubules growing like this with the disconnected toe can also push it up and force it out of the capsule. And you can have a great amount going on or a lesser amount. Either way, you're going to have a sore-footed horse. Sometimes they won't be sore-footed because the hoof is an amazing thing, and it goes to work to kind of shore everything up and stabilize everything. But reaches a certain point where that foot just can't hold itself together anymore. As it did in the case of Cat Dancer here, where finally, when her toe was clear back to here, this hoof wall cracked. Now see, it's interesting that the crack is about where you almost would have had to take off the wall to maybe try and help her get some relief. If you took this wall off, all of it like that, okay, you'd have taken her right back into this lamina right here. And I'll bet you she'd have been relieved more than anything else, but then you'd have to come in here as well, probably, and take this phony bar out. You know, I mean, what a wreck. She had a whole other foot growing in here. So, okay, I'm rambling now and repeating myself a zillion times, so I'll let you go.